All right. I am trying a new configuration here. I'm going to try to look at the camera a little more. Uh, I'm testing out this sort of proto podcast thing just to see. I don't know if I'm going to do it for reals or not, but at the very least, I've got a new hardware. I'm trying to figure out how to position my camera and stuff. So bear with me in my little adventures. Not that there are many viewers or anything, but this is a learning experience for me as well as a fun way to talk about stuff I like to talk about. Today, I'm going to keep it a little light. I'm going to talk about the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. What's that got to do with Philosophy Group? Brandon, what's going on with you? Well, for starters, before I even talk about anything about the movie, except for the fact that uh, there is a character in the movie that you might know who he is Socrates. And that's not the real Socrates, obviously, but he makes an appearance in this movie as an educational mentor. And of course, the Socrates, among other influences in this movie, uh, issues his quote, or they pick up his quote at some point that's attributed to him anyway. The only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing, uh, which is a great position to always hold, right? Just understanding that you are constantly learning, and the moment you think you know everything, man, that is the dangerous time for you because you're closing your mind to new information, right? So being open-minded, which is one of the major themes of this movie, is baked in, right? So there we go. Philosophy group. Uh, and then, of course, there's the tagline of the movie: "Be excellent to one another and party on, dudes." That's very silly on the surface. But if you think about it, wouldn't that be something? If if everyone was being excellent to one another, not just cohabitating, tolerance, you know, abiding them, but actually looking out for each other and trying to think of their point of view and considering their needs and desires and incorporating them to your own and knowing that they're doing the same for you and trying to meet you halfway and all that other stuff. If everyone was doing that, wow, what a world that would be, right? God, if we could just be excellent to one another, not just mashing around with each other and competing all the time, but actually working together like that and party on, dude. So it's just enjoying life, right? If everybody's working together and working together, then you can really enjoy it, right? So there you go. There's another one. The more you think about that one, the more truly utopian you start to understand what that message is trying to convey. So that's another part of it. But this movie came out in the late '80s, I believe, um, and I'm playing a lot of this by memory, so forgive me. But it came out in the late '80s. If you haven't seen it in a while, I recommend it. The last time I watched it with my daughter, um, and I was an adult now, and it blew my mind how different this movie was when you really break it down. Now, of course, part of my background is, of course, as I've mentioned, I'm a storyteller. I understand story structure. My ex is a published author, an actual published, real, honest to goodness author, who's published 7 books, and I was integral to all of those. I'm not taking credit for it, but I did help her quite a bit because I understand story structure, and there's a science to it. There really is. You know, the whole mechanism of telling a story, if you do not tell it in a proper pacing, it becomes incoherent. You don't know why, but everyone, when you watch a movie that is not following the beats and staying coherent, and keeping its pace with the act 1, 2, and 3 kind of model, you know that Vogler and Blake Snyder talk about, and Joseph Campbell to some extent, although he's older in his studies. Um, the movie just it sucks. You don't know why necessarily, but you feel it. I, my favorite is Episode One of Star Wars. That one just does it falls apart at the seams right in the first act, and they never pick it up. It just falls all over itself because it's not following the beats. That's why you don't like the movie. Jar Jar Binks is hate him as much as you want. He has his place, and then there's this the Darth Jar Jar theory. Anyway, and I could go into that one. That one's fun, but anyway, so understanding how these structures have to play out, you also understand that there's a lot of tropes that they lean on to make a movie familiar to people, right? Buddy movies like this follow a lot of similar patterns, and I'll talk about how this movie differs where I feel it diverges from the norm, and it does it in a lot of fundamental ways that are rather surprising when you are picking it apart and realizing what's happening. So the premise of the movie is very childish. Okay, it is a movie for teenage kids, older juveniles and young teenagers, and it's basically this story about these two kids who are from California, so they have kind of a that Southern California talk from that time. Seisha would know exactly what the term for it is. I don't know what it is. I did not grow up there. I just recognize it when I hear it. Um, but they the in the future, in the grand utopian future, these two become a band and they somehow hit on the chords or of the harmony of the universe, right? And so they become these prophetic beings, these pseudo messiahs that bring harmony to the universe and harmony to humanity with their music. And in this future, which is of course very 80s kind of style of the guy with the haircut that's like this. They've all got like these huge shoulder pads, and it's all polyester, everything's very angular, whatever. But anyway, they're paying attention to the timeline, whatever, and they're seeing that there's a problem, that Bill and Ted may split up in the past, and they got to do something about that, or their destiny is not going to be fulfilled, and the universe will not be in harmony or whatever, right? Whatever. So they take Rufus. Rufus is played by the late great George Carlin, and boy, if you ever get a chance, if you haven't already, watch some of his comedy specials, the HBO comedy specials. The best really one from 2008, I forget the name of it. They're really good. They will not leave you feeling very good. They will laugh your ass off. But he had a sharp wit, and it was an incredible court jester for his time, lampooning American society. But anyway, he plays this character who they send back in time to go help Bill and Ted prevent this future. Well, what's the problem? Ted, I believe it's Ted, is the one that's really in dire straits, is in very serious danger of flunking high school. Okay, he is actually running out of time, which is a continual theme of this movie. Of course, I hope so. It's a time travel movie. Um, Basically, he's not applying himself, is how you would probably put that most accurately. He's not stupid. I mean, he kind of acts like a dummy, but he's smart enough. But he's failing high school because he has not been doing what he needs to be successful. And the year has trudged on, and his frustrated teachers have been telling him, "You got to do your homework. You got to do your homework." And now you're running up against it. You have run out of time to make up all this work, um, and you're going to fail high school, my friend. Is basically what he's told, and that's why the band is going to split up. Is because what's going to happen is because he fails high school, his father is going to send him off to remedial school or whatever, and he and Ted are going to break up, and they're never going to make their music, right? So of course the first thing you think is, oh, the overbearing authoritarian society is bearing down on Ted, and he's misunderstood and all this other stuff. No, this is Ted's fault. He has not been applying himself. He's been dicking around with his friend, and they think his friend. That's part of it, is they think his friend is a bad influence, but it's not really that he's a bad influence. Is that they're feeding on each other in a kind of a Beavis and Butthead sort of way, where they're just busy doing other stuff and not doing what they need to do. Now, the instructors and all the school staff, they want these guys to succeed. They do. They want them to graduate, and they're basically their backs are against the wall with these guys. They're like, look, you just haven't been doing the work, and now this is the challenge they throw down to them. The only way you're gonna graduate is if, man, and it's so unlikely with you guys, but it will let you graduate if you knock it out of the park for your final presentation. It's kind of like a talent show. You put this final presentation, you knock our socks off, and we give you A's, we'll let you graduate high school. Already, that's a pretty big concession, I would say, compared to everybody else. That's part of it. Everybody else has been doing the work. These guys haven't. Now, Bill is not in risk of failure, although we get a pretty clear picture. He's not doing so great either, but Ted's the one that's in real trouble. But the school is holding them to a high standard, and they're not going to carry these guys across the finish line. They're very clear about it. We will root for you, we will encourage you, we will counsel you, we'll do everything, but you've got to put in the effort. Everyone else is. We hold you to a high standard, which as in and of itself is already an interesting thing to say in modern society, where we keep lowering standards so people do cross the finish line. And now we're in a position where like a third of the population can't read above a fourth grade level or something crazy. It's crazy how bad the literacy rate is in the United States right now, because we're doing this and not holding people to high standards because we don't want anybody to fail, right? Failure is bad. True. We're being measured on our success. True. And not to get super political, but this sort of thing happened in Maoist China, where they were expecting quotas out of their various farms, and they would punish the ones that were lowest on the totem pole there. And so they started to lie about their metrics to the point where it became absolute garbage what they were sending the government. Well, the government would get the numbers. They're like, wow, we're doing a great job. But the reality on the ground was that people were starving to death because they weren't producing, but they all had to report these ridiculous numbers and turn these huge bushels of grain while they were not eating themselves to avoid the punishment that they were trying to avoid, right? So there's a whole statement there. But the point is that they're being held to a high standard, and the school is not actually being unfair about this. They're just holding them to a standard that everybody else is being held to, okay? So it's not really the authorities' fault. They knew this going in, what the expectation was. They're not meeting it. Now, Ted's father, who is threatening to send him to military school, right there, for a couple of different reasons, can be very quickly viewed as being a super authoritarian jerk. Okay. And military school, especially in my day, I don't know how it is today, but military school was a huge threat, right? Military school, at least in my day, was where you sent real troublemakers, like kids who were violent offenders and kids who were in trouble, not necessarily violent, but, you know, kids that it was last chance saloon. It was almost like that or juvenile hall, right? You had somebody who's like, we need to send you someplace where they will keep you in line, right? So military school is kind of a heavy threat. But especially as an adult, you realize Ted's dad is up against the wall too, because from what I understand, he's a single father. And he doesn't have a lot of time. He's busy, man. He's telling Ted, look, I am putting a roof over your head and I'm feeding you and all these other things. I just need you to do the thing that you're supposed to do and graduate high school. I can't be there for you all the time. I need you to step up. I need you to be mature. I need you to be an adult and take care of business. And you're not doing it. And I'm out of ideas. And maybe I'm just not able to do this by myself. I'm going to have to enlist help. And the only thing I know to do is to send you to some sort of remedial school, right? So he's a sympathetic character too. He is worn thin trying to help his son. And if you really think about it in a realistic perspective, that might actually be the right answer for Ted, or at least a right answer for Ted, because his father wants him to succeed. And maybe in that scenario, he will succeed and go on to be a fine gentleman like he knows he can be. He needs some discipline, and I can't give it to him. I can't force this discipline on him, right? So right there, it breaks with a lot of Hollywood tropes in that it's not an oppressive, unfair society that is weighing down on you, expecting unreasonable things and delivering punishment on you for not achieving these unreasonable things or anything like that. The society is understandable. It requires a high standard, but it's nothing it's not expecting from everyone else, which it seems like most of Ted's peers are not in this situation. So it's clearly the fault lies nowhere really else but Ted, right? And his buddy. So, of course, they encounter Rufus. And Rufus, as a mentor, he's not carrying their water either. What Rufus does, though, is that I would guess what you would say is that he recognizes that their learning style is non-traditional. They are tactile, experiential learners, right? That is how they learn best. They want to see it in person. They want to interact. And that's hard to do when you're teaching 50 kids in a classroom. It's all seminar. I have a terrible time learning in that way too. I've actually been in and suffered from a very similar situation as Ted. I ran out of time. My grades were no good. You know, I ended up having to get a GED, which I was one of the best scores in Washington State because I got 99th percentile in 5 out of the 6 tests and 97th percentile on the last one. You know, it wasn't that I wasn't capable. It wasn't even that I didn't know the stuff. It's that I wasn't meeting the standard, right? I didn't learn that way that they were teaching me. I'd learned in a different way on my own. Anyway, so you can kind of blame the system, I suppose. But really what's happening is Rufus is facilitating his particular learning style, or their particular learning style, but he's not doing it for them. He gives them instructions. He tells them, this is what you got to do. You got to go here, 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 here. And these points in times, you're going to meet these people, talk to this guy, get some information, right? And I think the objective actually is to kidnap these people, you know, bring Napoleon back to do your presentation with you, right? Whatever. But that's an adventure that where they learn as they go back to meet and acquire these people by hook or by crook, that is going to help them learn immense amounts of information in a short amount of time. They can learn this information if it's presented in a proper fashion. But he doesn't do it for them. He gives them the instructions. He meets them from time to time to check on their progress. He gives them their checklists, but they have to go on their own. He gives them their own time machine and sends them on their way. Okay. Now, you will notice about these two pretty quickly that they get along excellently. They do not squabble. They don't. Not at all throughout the entire movie. They have disagreements. They see things a different way, or they're feeding information from one to the other or whatever. But they're very open-minded with each other. They're very receptive to what the other person is saying and taking their point of view and taking their information. And they're always lifting each other up. They are never calling each other names. They are never dragging each other down. And even when there's a situation, you know, especially with the girls, you know, where one of them could succeed over the other one, there's no jealousy at play, no envy. They're just like, yeah, go get her. She likes you, man. Go get her. You're not, oh man, I need, you know, like none of that is going on with them. They don't feel envy towards one another. A remarkable set of characteristics, because you don't see that very often. Why? Because in Hollywood, those are excellent sources of contention. They create drama built in, right? There's one girl that they're arguing over. There you go. That's a great set of conflicts. Sure. You know, and it's really, yeah, it's a realistic thing. So that's why it's so rare to see these characters so collaborative, so cooperative with one another. They're an excellent team, like the way human beings should be. So you'll notice that about them. And as they go throughout their adventures, well, you could say that there's a little bit of comic book violence, like they drop a trash can on their father's head or whatever, you know, silly things that's more meant to obstruct, it's not meant to harm. And there's one scene where I think one of them, I think it's Ted, is defending himself against a knight that's attacking them because he thinks that they're invaders of some sort. You know, they're speaking a foreign language, they speak English or whatever, and they're in France, whatever it is. And so they come after him. They never resort to violence. Not ever. Violence is never the solution. They never knock anybody out to get around the corner or anything like that. The trash can thing is the closest equivalent in this movie, which is meant to distract essentially and defending themselves. And he's not even trying to harm the other person. He's just trying to stop the blade from hitting him. He's not actually trying to attack this dude at all in any way. It's not even a matter of self-defense in that he's returning fire, so to speak. He's just trying to get out of there. Anytime somebody presents them with violence, they try to talk people down or they're trying to get away. That there is not very common in Hollywood. How many times you see like, oh, let's just knock this guy out because he deserved it or whatever. And there's only a few people that they insult. And you can even maybe even parse their insults as just they're observing in their own juvenile way, you know, royal ugly dude or whatever, you know, like there's some comic elements to that, but they're not dragging others down around them either, except for maybe the comic book villains that serve as the foils in this movie. Every single person they meet, they have immediate respect for as another human being. They may not understand them. They may not agree with them. They may not, you know, get along with them at all, which they're just trying to get out of there. But throughout their conversations with other human beings, the people that they meet, they're always receptive to what those people are saying. They are taking on knowledge from every source they can get it from and incorporating it into their own views. They are being considerate to other people, and they change their views. They're like, I didn't think of it that way, you know, or somebody will tell them something and they're like, oh yeah, or oh, you know, like they are constantly doing that through that film. They're soaking up knowledge and wisdom like sponges throughout the movie. Yet again, another one. Because another, I think, is a scourge throughout Hollywood, especially in the last 15, 20 years, is that the kids know everything. They are the smart ones. They are superpowered. They understand the world. Mom and dad don't. The adults don't get it, you know. Now, it's not to say that those movies didn't exist, right? You know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is another one I'll talk about in the future. But, you know, where the parents are just clueless. But for the most part, in the way that they present, especially the dads, and I don't sound like that, but man, some of the dads in these shows, they're just presented as just true chuckleheads or they're jerks. They're never presented in a positive fashion. Very rarely anymore are fathers presented as, you know, strong, you know, good influences. There's something wrong there almost always. It's very depressing, honestly, as a father. But anyway, in this movie, the adults know. Now they don't know everything. They're not perfect, and they're frustrated. And they don't know what to do with these kids. And sometimes, you know, especially they're the people who they're trying to abscond or, you know, invading their homes and stuff. You know, like, why are you in this castle? Who are you? You know, so of course they're gonna freak out about these guys. But they're not presented as dummies. You know, they're belligerent sometimes, but they're not incompetent. And the kids are not presented as all-knowing, all-powerful. They're just trying to learn and trying to get through it. So that's another thing that's very rare, especially now. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, so they've gathered all their new friends from all over time and space. They come back and they're like, we did it, Rufus. We got it. And he's like, good job. Now you got to get to work. And they're like, oh, you know, I thought we did the work. Like, no, you learned the information. Now you got to apply it. So get to it. You know how to do it. And he gives them some basic instructions. And again, he's not going to carry them over the finish line. No one is carrying them over the finish line. He still expects them to do the work. But they do. They put all the effort in. And of course, movie magic montage or whatever. They put together their amazing presentation. And they get their A's, and Ted passes high school, and they don't break up, and everything's going to be great. And they abducted two willing girls from the Middle Ages. I don't know what the butterfly effect on that would be. I don't think they even speak English. But Anyway, and then of course at the end it reveals that they're not very good guitar players at all. they got they got a lot of work to do there too. It's not going to come easy. I think there's so many positive things in that movie that were overlooked because of course it's presented as this silly buddy movie. But anyway, I encourage you to watch it if you haven't in a long time, and just ponder it from that angle because compared to a lot of stuff, contemporary and modern, you just don't see movies like that. Very rarely, where the main characters are so positive and so uplifting and so gentle to one another, to the other people they meet, to humanity at large, then no wonder the music they make together brings harmony to the universe. Because their whole life's philosophy revolves around being excellent to one another.